Thank you, and very good morning to the court. I think yesterday we agreed on the order of business this morning. The team led by Senior Counsel Professor Githurano will have 15 minutes to respond to the questions that were 30 minutes to respond to the questions that were raised yesterday.
Good morning, Madam Chief Justice and the distinguished judges of this court. We are ready to respond to the questions that the court put to us at the end of the day yesterday. I have Mr. Mahat Somane, who the court has already found a fairly useful man in explaining numbers, and he will be responding on the numbers. But I have brought on board Mr. George Murugu, who has previously not been on the front bench, who is very, very well acquainted with the architecture of the electoral process, and both of them will be responding in the 30 minutes that you've given us. But there was a question directed to me personally by Lady Justice Jokindong, and I will deal with that question at the very end. Mr. Brooke.
Good morning to all of us again, and Senior Counsel, just before your team starts, on the question of voter turnout, and as you respond, please bear in mind the following so that we know that you are answering our concern. In Forms 34A, some of them have the rejected ballot. That's what Mahat taught us yesterday, added to the votes cast, so that the figures on 34A are not necessarily the figures in 34B and not in 34C. So tell us, as you answer the question in your own manner and style, on voter turnout, was it calculated on the numbers in 34A, B, or C? Senior Counsel, you understand our concern? Thank you very much.
Madam Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, honorable and distinguished judges of this court, my name is George Murugu. I am here to answer questions that then the bench put to the commission and to the chairman. I will be as brief as possible, noting the little time that I have, and I hope that I'll be as useful to the bench as my colleague Mr. Mahat has been. Now, I will straight away start with the questions that were put to the first and second respondent by His Honorable Justice Ouko. And the first question was to do with the question of unutilized ballots and how they are accounted for. This is the way unutilized ballots are treated. At Regulation 69, which provides for the voting procedure, that is the Regulation 69 of the Election General Regulations, it provides that a voter will be issued with ballot papers for all elections in a multiple election. That is at Regulation 69.2. At 69.2A, he is expected to cast his votes in respect of all the elections. 69.3 makes it an offense for a person to knowingly fail to place his or her ballot paper issued to him inside a ballot box. But at Regulation 77E, an unmarked ballot is treated as rejected and is void and shall not be counted for purposes of declaring a result at the polling station. At Regulation 78.3, the presiding officer then is put under an obligation to record in Form 41 the head of rejection for each ballot, and for our purposes, sub-regulation 3D then addresses the question of unmarked ballots. Regulation 81B then provides that rejected ballots, such as the unmarked ballots, are sealed in a tamper-proof envelope and placed in the ballot box. That is how they are accounted for, Honorable Justice of the Supreme Court. The second question that I shall deal with, and this again it was posed by His Honorable Justice Mr. Ouko, was whether the appointment of the chairperson as the returning officer was as an agent of the commission or as a national returning officer in his capacity as chairman. This is how I would wish to address this question. It is a direct one, and the answer lies in the Constitution. Article 138(10) places an obligation upon the chairperson of the commission to declare the result. So the gazettement was not for purposes of Article 138(3)(c), but specifically for Article 138(10), to fulfill that role, to take up that responsibility, to account for that result that follows a presidential election. That is the specific purpose for that gazettement. But while I'm on this question, I would also want to pose another question. Would it then mean that if the gazette notice was to fall away, would it then mean that the chairperson of the commission under Article 138(10) would not be in a position and suffer lack of constitutional authority to declare that result? My answer is no. In other words, the gazette notice is purposely to tell Kenyans that the Constitution has rested these obligations upon this office to declare that result. Beyond that, it is superfluous. And I urge Madam Chief Justice and Honorable Justices of the Supreme Court that that particular gazettement should not be read to mean that the chairperson had gone rogue, that the chairperson had taken upon himself and arrogated unto himself a power that he did not have. It is the Constitution speaking. It is in fulfillment of a constitutional expectation and obligation under Article 138(10). If you allow me, my colleague Mr. Mahat Somani will address the other punctuated questions that don't feature in my presentation.